Verse 10, the reason for all of the stipulations Paul has given thus far are made clear. Verse 9 gives us context for what is written here, as the conclusion of verse 9 tells us that the overseers of the churches on Crete must be able to refute those who contradict. Verse 10 continues, stating, "For there are many rebellious men, empty talkers, and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision." Paul lists three characteristics of those who contradict the apostolic teachings here, before singling out a specific group of contradictors in particular. First, he says the contradictors are rebellious, or insubordinate. Second, he says they are empty talkers, or people who speak senselessly, and that they are deceivers, people who intentionally mislead. Finally, Paul singles out a group of contradictors and identifies them as those of the circumcision. As we've said before, this is where not knowing the rest of Scripture actually becomes a hindrance when trying to interpret the text. If we're following the story of Scripture, we know that the first major fight in the early church was over this issue of circumcision. That is recounted in Acts 15. In order to understand the importance of that topic, you have to be familiar with the Old Testament precedent of circumcision, which was implemented as part of the Abrahamic covenant, which you can read about in Genesis 17. The roots of Christianity lie within the Jewish system of thought, which takes seriously the circumcision of males 8 days after their birth. Christians acknowledge Jesus as the Jewish Messiah spoken of in the Old Testament, and consider the church a mystery revealed by God in the New Testament and continuing into the present day. Now, the Gentiles, or those who are not Jewish, have access to the Jewish messianic figure and can become part of the church. What Acts 15 shows us is the major fight that broke out in the early church regarding whether or not Gentiles who are now coming into a faith with Jewish roots should be circumcised and observe traditional Jewish rituals, all of which find their precedent in the Old Testament and is sometimes referred to in the New Testament scriptures as the law. Throughout the New Testament, Paul and the apostles are going to teach that Gentiles do not have to adopt the practices of the law and be circumcised. Yet there are those who are going to teach contradictory to that teaching, and they are known as Judaizers. That is the group that Paul has singled out here at the end of verse 10, and he's going to deal with them further in the next couple of verses.